MuggleCast is brought to you by GoDaddy.com. GoDaddy hosting plans are now more powerful than ever. Best of all, plans start at just $3.95 a month. And no matter what plan you choose, your site receives 24/7 maintenance and protection in the GoDaddy.com world-class data center. Plus, as a MuggleCast listener, enter code MUGGLE, that's MUGGLE, when you check out, and save an additional 10% on any order. Get your piece of the internet at GoDaddy.com. This week's podcast is also brought to you by Audible.com, the internet's leading provider of audiobooks with more than 75,000 downloadable titles across all types of literature, including fiction, nonfiction, and periodicals. For a free audiobook of your choice, go to audiblepodcast.com/MuggleCast.
Hello, this is David Heyman, and I'm the producer of the Harry Potter films, and this is MuggleCast.
Because the Floo Network just got X-rated, this is MuggleCast, episode 210 for October the 1st, 2010.
Welcome everyone to MuggleCast. It's episode 210. Micah and Laura are here, and well, Eric's supposed to be here, but as we all remember with episode 208, he delayed us so long. If you listen to, I think I put it in the bloopers, I'm not sure. He delayed us so long that poor Laura was on for only like a half hour, 45 minutes, so this time we're just starting without him.
We know how much everybody wants to hear Laura, so...
And less of Eric.
Yeah, we can't only have her on for a half hour. That's just not enough Laura.
Right.
Well, gosh, Micah. I'm all flattered and stuff over here.
Well,
maybe I should leave.
It's not me, it's what the people who write the emails have to say.
Oh, sure, Micah. We're on to you.
Oh, damn.
Well, as always, there's plenty of Deathly Hallows news to talk about, and we're going to continue our chapter-by-chapter series, and also bring back an old favorite segment, and that would be Favorites.
Oh, man.
Favorite segment.
Forgot about that one.
So, everyone get ready. I'm Andrew Sims.
I'm Laura Thompson.
And I'm Micah Tannenbaum.
Micah Tannenbaum, give us the news. What's going on?
Well, actually, today Warner Brothers released high-res versions of Deathly Hallows Part 1 posters. And I was wondering, you guys have a chance to take a look at these yet?
Yeah.
It's funny. You know, there's this big emphasis on Part 1 with they're not at Hogwarts. So we see these posters, and it's Harry, Ron, and Hermione each behind, you see some London landmark in the background, and Ron, he's right in front of power plants, which is so funny to me.
I just like the nowheres.
Not even a power plant, because it's toxic.
Yeah, what's up with that, though? To be honest with you, I really didn't like the posters. They were a little weird. I mean, they didn't really seem to fit with the whole Harry Potter theme, even though, like you said, they're not at Hogwarts anymore. But it just didn't look right to me.
Well, it seems like they're definitely trying to play up the action element of this. And I swear to God, like, every poster we get, they're all cut up. And I like how there's like blood splatters in them. I'm like, really?
Who's doing the Photoshop?
That is very odd. The red at the bottom of all of them. Like, what's going on there? What does that even mean? Like, it looks like it's out of V for Vendetta or Watchmen or something. Another Warner Brothers film. But yeah, it's definitely action-oriented, these posters. The camera's nice and low, and you're sort of looking up at the actor, and it's sort of godlike. And I like them, actually. I don't think they're bad. My favorite one is actually Harry. Maybe just because I have a crush on him. But Ron and Hermione ones aren't as cool as the Harry one, I don't think.
No, well,
it looks like Armageddon, though, in Harry's poster.
And I mean, Andrew, you're totally right. The Ron poster, like, he's just not even in front of anything remotely significant. Like, you look
it's
at...
it's out of The Simpsons.
Yeah, you look at Harry and Hermione, and, like, they're clearly in London, but, like, Ron could be anywhere. It's just, maybe, I don't know, maybe that's when he runs away. I don't know. But it's kind of silly.
Well, there's definitely what happens with when we sort of get the idea from a couple screen caps we saw from the video game. The Snatchers find the trio around a power plant. Now, of course, this isn't in the book, but obviously between the stills from the video games and now this poster, we know there's definitely going to be some action-oriented scene around a power plant.
Oh, well, great. So on top of the fact that they're being sought out by the Snatchers, they're going to get, like, radiation poisoning. Awesome.
And see Homer walk out of the office after a long day. What else is going on, Micah, in the news?
Author J.K. Rowling will appear on the Oprah show tomorrow. We're recording on Thursday night. And so we don't have much to say about it other than the fact that she's going to be on the show. And it's going to be interesting to hear from Jo because we haven't heard from her in quite some time. Hopefully she'll shed a little bit of light on the encyclopedia and where she's at with that.
It's hard to say. I mean, we know Oprah is going to ask the question, as it was teased already. Oprah's going to ask the question, will there ever be another Harry Potter?
Oh my God.
We'll get an answer like that. I imagine Joe's going to give us the best hints yet. Because, in the past, when she's been asked about writing another Harry Potter book, she sort of beats around the bush. And we know she's working on an encyclopedia. And we know she's been busy writing, based on her tweets. So I hope she announces, and it would be very cool if she announced the book. But I'm not getting my hopes up. I feel like there would be more hype around this interview. They would want to promote that Jo is going to announce her next book with Oprah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't see it happening. I just don't see where else she could go with this without being very contrived. You know what I mean? Like, Harry's story is over. Like, he's grown and he has kids now. So, I mean, like, what is she going to write about? Like, Harry Potter and the Diaper Genie? Like, I just don't see it happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for Oprah's audience, that's the way you want to tease it. Will she ever write another Harry Potter? Of course, hardcore fans just want to know when the encyclopedia is coming out.
Right.
I think you're right, though, Andrew. I think if that was going to be the case, they probably would have done a lot more PR around it.
Yeah.
So,
Oprah did mention this is one of her favorite interviews she's ever done, which is pretty exciting because I don't watch Oprah that often, but I imagine she doesn't say that with every interview. And they released a commercial the other day. It's like a 30-second preview, and we see a couple quick shots of Oprah firing the questions at Jo. And at one point, Oprah says to Jo, "Is it true that you still ride the bus?" Like, what?
What?
Jo still rides the bus? Come on. If she says yes to that, I will be very surprised. Because in the commercial, they edited it so Oprah asked the question and you see Jo like cringe and look down. Like, it looks all depressing. But, is Oprah losing her touch? Surely J.K. Rowling does not still ride public transit.
Well, I mean, it's possible when you think about where she lives.
What? Possible? What? Like, people wouldn't recognize her?
Well, no. I mean, just, like, it's the sort of, I mean, I've never been to Edinburgh, but from what I've heard, it's like sort of the kind of a small town, like a small city type community almost.
Yeah.
And I mean, the fact of the matter is we're one of the only countries in the world where people drive everywhere. I mean, everywhere else tends to have very good public transit.
But come on, Laura. Jo can afford having her own private
But she doesn't
car.
drive. Didn't you guys know that? She actually, like, don't you remember hearing that? She never learned to drive or she doesn't have a driver's license?
Yeah, I'm not saying she drives. I'm saying someone drives her around.
You actually, I don't know. I don't know that she would be pretentious enough to have a chauffeur.
well, didn't we have this conversation, though, about flying, though, too, when she was writing Deathly Hallows? She was taking the manuscript back overseas with her or something along those lines, and she was getting on a Virgin Atlantic or a British Airways flight. And we were thinking to ourselves, wouldn't she have a private plane that would take her?
I do not remember that, but
Yeah, I do remember this.
And she took a regular flight.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they
Wow.
wouldn't let her get on the plane with the manuscript, which was in sort of this massive briefcase, and I guess she didn't want to check it.
Oh, right.
So I wouldn't want to check it either. That's a lot of money that's in that suitcase.
Well, I mean, where would Joe even have gotten that question from about the bus? I mean, wouldn't we have known that? Like, so why would Oprah, like, is there a rumor going around that Joe rides the bus?
We're clearly just not good enough fans.
For fun, she just rides the bus all day. She could buy the
riding
bus.
the bus. And I mean, if she's riding on the bus, she can certainly spend some more time twittering.
Exactly.
What are you going to do when you're riding the bus?
I don't
Nobody
know.
reads.
Maybe
Everybody tweets now.
Maybe she doesn't have a smartphone, Andrew. You never know.
I am riding the bus. I'm riding it around town. It's a beautiful day.
All right, it's time to move on.
Yes. Before we move on, we'd like to remind everyone that this podcast is brought to you by Audible.com, the internet's leading provider of audiobooks with more than 75,000 downloadable titles across all types of literature and featuring audio versions of many New York Times bestsellers. For listeners of MuggleCast, Audible is offering a free audiobook to give you a chance to try out their service. One audiobook to consider is The Hunger Games, a thrilling young adult novel that's actually part of a great trilogy. Nearly all the hosts of MuggleCast have read it, and we all really highly recommend it. So for a free audiobook of your choice, such as The Hunger Games, go to audiblepodcast.com/MuggleCast. That's audiblepodcast.com/MuggleCast.
Well, we got some new casting news for Deathly Hallows Part 2, particularly for the epilogue scene. Ryan Turner will play Hugo Weasley. This seemed to be everybody's favorite choice in the comment section. Will Dunn will play James Sirius Potter, and Arthur Bowen will play Albus Severus. And
Yeah, I saw somebody did a side-by-side comparison of this Hugo Weasley actor next to the young Rupert Grint back when he was first cast, and they actually do look very similar.
They
so
do.
That was a great casting.
And also, Ellie Darcy Alden will play young Lily Evans. And the article that we got this from also mentioned that Rohan Gotobed was interesting last name. Was cast as a young Sirius Black. So they will be doing those flashback scenes.
Oh, good.
From Part 2. So, sure everybody is looking forward to that.
That's going to be cool.
What other Deathly Hallows news is going on?
There's news on the music front, Andrew.
Oh.
Yeah. Conrad Pope, a composer who is apparently working with Alexandre Desplat for the score of Deathly Hallows Part 1, updated his Facebook profile. We get news from everywhere. With the following information. Just finished the first week with the LSO of recording Alexandre Desplat's score for HP7. Harry Potter now occupies a new musical universe. For Lovegood AD has written a charming, groovin' theme. Dobby 2 is given a new voice. The emotional music reaches its climax in Ron's speech in the wilderness, where the poetry of AD conveys the emotion in a single chord's voicing. Stay tuned.
Wow. Sounds very technical.
Yeah. Well, I think AD stands for Alexandre Desplat. Or no.
Oh, right, of course, yeah.
Yeah, he's trying to get creative there, and he was not fooling me.
Yeah, so Dobby has a new voice. That's interesting. Like, not literally a voice, but his tune, so to speak.
Does he sound like a mouse or something?
No, he's saying voice like the background music for him, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. And also we got a release date for the score, November the 16th. The soundtrack will go on sale, so pre-order, Andrew.
I wonder what Dobby's old voice was. Like, what was his old score? I don't remember that. I may have to watch Chamber of Secrets to refresh my mind.
You just might. The last piece of Deathly Hallows news was Nick Moran, the actor who's going to play Scabior, the Snatcher, which is a new character, not in the book. He revealed in an interview that some scenes were cut because they were too gory. And The quote was, "The scenes I did were really, really dark, really, really dark. But when I went to see them, they cut some of the worst bits out." And I was talking to producer David Heyman saying, "Oh no, why is that gone?" He said, "Apparently, it was like watching Saw."
I don't believe it was that bad.
Yeah,
they say
I don't
this.
think
They
so.
say this every time. They're always like, "Oh, this scene was really dark, so we had to cut it because it was too violent." And I'm like, "Yeah,
It's the darkest one yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it would have been interesting to ask Eric about that, though, I think, because he's seen the movie, but apparently they cut those scenes out anyway, so it wouldn't have made much of a difference.
Yeah, well, Eric's not here, so that doesn't make much of a difference either.
Well, in terms of darkness, we have a email I was going to say for Muggle Mail, but I'd like to do it now since it's sort of the same topic, and I really want to get Laura's take. It comes from Sam, 19 of Toronto. He writes, "Hi guys, after listening to episode 209 and watching the trailer myself, I was a bit concerned with the fact that the movie will have scenes that are strongly reminiscent of the Holocaust. While I do agree that parts of the book reminded me of this, I am not sure how appropriate it is to have such blatant similarities, such as the red armbands those ministry officials wear. Many people are likely to get offended by this. I was wondering what your guys' opinion on the matter is." Now, Laura, did you see the Part 1 trailer? Yeah, and I don't know if you caught it, but during the Ministry of Magic scenes, when you see shots of the Ministry, there are Ministry officials wearing red armbands, and it was very apparent what it was and what it was resembling. What's your take on that? Do you think that's appropriate?
I mean, I don't know. I think you're going to see this kind of reflection in any film that deals with, like, the war scenario. I mean, in Order of the Phoenix, for instance, do you remember the big black and white poster they had of Fudge?
Yeah.
That was very reminiscent of Stalin.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I mean, I guess it goes both ways. And I think it's one of those things where if you're looking for something like that, you're going to find it. But you can also look at these movies and these books and dig out a number of other references, to dictatorships and wars and messed up societies. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think World War II is more prevalent because it's the one that people are most familiar with, especially due to the Holocaust. But I don't know. I mean, these sorts of things happen with corrupt people. They come up with silly armbands and they take, symbols that were originally from Asian culture that meant peace and then turn them on their side. And then you have the swastika. So I don't know.
Yeah. I think it is okay for them to have it in the film. I think it really connects the wizarding world to the real world. And it makes you realize, what it was like. So I think it's okay.
I think definitely it's a way for David Yates to be able to make the connection a lot stronger, as you were saying, Andrew. I think there's nothing wrong with it. I think he wants to drive home the point that, the ministry is corrupt and it's in absolute power, and the best way to do that is to draw the parallel to Nazi Germany.
All right, well, let's continue with the news.
Okay, we got some clips from the Ultimate Editions of Prisoner of Azkaban and Goblet of Fire, and the first was Creating the World of Harry Potter documentary, and it focused on Part 3, which is Creatures. And in that particular scene, crew members discuss how they designed goblins. It also features some great never before seen concept art. And I took a look at the clip earlier. Andrew, you have both of the Ultimate Editions for Sorcerer's Stone and Chamber of Secrets?
That's right, Micah. That's
right. You do? Okay. No, because, I mean, this is the reason why you go out and buy them, right? I mean, more or less.
Yeah, this is the best. For anyone who doesn't know, the Ultimate Editions, they released the Sorcerer's Stone and Chamber of Secrets Ultimate Editions last year. They are releasing the Prisoner of Azkaban and Goblet of Fire Ultimate Editions this year. And the special thing about these Ultimate Editions is that they have one part of a 8-part documentary looking at everything in the Harry Potter fandom or in the Harry Potter universe. The creation of the creatures, like Micah mentioned, finding the stars, composing the scores. There's going to be one part on the Harry Potter fandom, I think on the Half-Blood Prince, or Deathly Hallows Part 1 documentary. So It's
Are
really
you
cool.
featured in that fandom piece?
Yeah, I made that whole thing.
You did? Oh, okay.
I made that whole part, yeah.
Andrew made the fandom. Didn't you know that, Micah?
You know what? Actually, I really hope that Warner Brothers approaches the fan sites about that, because how could you not include the fan sites in a whole thing about the Harry Potter fandom?
That's true. You raise a good point.
Be ridiculous. What else are they going to talk about? They could talk about the fans turning out to the premieres and the book releases, but anyway. So the best part about these Ultimate Editions is the documentary, because when it's all said and done, we're going to have this beautiful 9-hour documentary looking at everything the Harry Potter franchise has created. So it's really special. And the packaging, you get a little booklet with each one too that has some really nice concept art and stills. So it's really cool. And I can't wait to have the entire set. It's going to be great.
Yeah. So go to the site, check out the clips. As you mentioned, the one from Goblet of Fire is on the music and the composing side of things, and the one from Prisoner of Azkaban, as we talked about, has the goblins and also how they went about designing the Dementors. And both of them are on sale October 19th, so this month. And we may or may not be running a promotion to give away Ultimate Edition DVDs.
Can I enter to win?
No, sorry. You are a MuggleNet staffer, therefore you are prohibited from entering the contest.
Oh.
But it will be a great contest. We did it before with the last two Ultimate Editions. We also gave away a Blu-ray player, and we will be doing that again. So
sweet. Blu-ray is the way to go, by the way, especially for the Harry Potter films. They look great.
Yep. All right, final bit of news. We touched on it briefly in the live show, but we didn't have too much time to talk about it. Apparently, the Wizarding World could expand within the next 12 months.
Well, I don't think they're actually going to do it in the next 12 months, but they sent out a survey to people who have visited the park, and they said, what if, instead of expanding it, we doubled the size of the Wizarding World of Harry Potter? How likely would you be to visit the Wizarding World of Harry Potter again within the next 12 months to visit a Wizarding World of Harry Potter that was twice as big, with twice as much as everything? So you select very likely, likely, somewhat likely, not very likely, and not at all likely. And it's very interesting. I mean, what this says is, they don't want to just expand it. They want to double it. They want to see if doubling it would get everyone back to the park.
That's awesome.
And I hope many people selected very likely. Because
as long as we don't have to watch another freaking promotional video that's an hour long before we can get in.
Well, that was before the little party in the park, Laura. Not everyone has to do that,
Yeah, okay. You know very well that if they do this, we're going to end up having another one of those Night in the Park events.
Yes.
You know what? I'm already there, Universal. I don't need you to sell it to me. Thanks.
Well,
yeah. So it's exciting. I hope they do. I don't think it'll happen within a year. I think maybe 2 years. But even that's pushing it, I think.
And just kind of a follow-up on the story. I think we did it on episode 208 of the gentleman who couldn't ride the Forbidden Journey because of a weight problem.
Yeah, we talked about that on the last episode.
Yeah, but apparently they fixed some of the seats so that now you can go and you can ride for people who might have a little bit more weight on them.
Yeah. Have different body dimensions.
What was previous. They have a whole lighting system in place now.
So it'll tell you if you're too big for the regular seats, you have to sit in one of the larger seats, so to speak. And
it's just so terrible, though. I mean, you'd think that they would make this ride so that everybody can ride it. You know, the fact that we're even having this discussion is a little bit
Yeah, I mean,
unsettling.
It can get complicated, though. I mean, designing these rides, I'm sure, at least they added a seat that lets more people ride it.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I was also reading about that as well. And what Mike is describing is it's like a green, a yellow, and a red light. So like if you get a green light, you can sit in any seat. If you get a yellow light, you have to sit in a modified seat. And if you get a red one, you still can't ride. Like, can you imagine being the person who still gets a red light? Like, that would suck so bad. I would be devastated.
Yeah, that's not good. But there you go. So that's all the news,
That
Micah?
is all the news I have.
All right. Well, don't sit back, kick back just yet. It's time now for chapter by chapter, and you are guiding us to the first chapter.
Oh, that's right. I didn't even notice.
Chapter 10, Mayhem at the Ministry.
All right. Well, everybody remember that when we last left off, they were at the Quidditch World Cup. The Death Eaters had their little fun by hanging Muggles in the air, and now everybody is returning back to their homes, and the Weasleys return to the Burrow. And the first people that Mrs. Weasley goes for are Fred and George. And remember on 208, we had this whole discussion about why doesn't Mrs. Weasley just leave the two of them alone, give them their space to plan their joke shop and stop being so hard on them. And it's interesting that, she says, oh, I can't believe, the last thing that I did was essentially yell at you guys, and here you go off to the Quidditch World Cup and you almost get killed. So it seems like events like that always change people's perspectives on silly situations.
Yep, she'll be regretting that one in 3 years.
Ouch.
Do you think Mrs. Weasley had like a major change of heart after this? Now that her worst fear had almost come to fruition, like it sort of made her realize, like, oh man, I should stop treating them this way. What if I do lose them? Because we are at war.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because later on in the chapter, Fred and George continue to play it up. Like every time Mrs. Weasley might have the opportunity to reprimand them for something, they say, oh, well, what if we go off to Hogwarts and the train crashes and we both die? Think about the last thing you'll have said to us, So
that was pretty funny.
Yeah, they're definitely taking advantage of it. So, but we learn in this chapter about one of our favorite characters, Rita Skeeter. We get our first introduction to her because she writes a terrible account of what happened at the Quidditch World Cup. And Percy, in particular, calls her a terrible woman. And I don't remember exactly, but I think his attitude towards her does change a bit as we move towards Order of the Phoenix, and she starts writing all those things about Harry and Dumbledore. So it was interesting how when she was attacking the Ministry, Percy thinks she's a terrible woman, but as the books progress and she is supportive of the Ministry and against Dumbledore, he begins to take her side.
Yeah, and Rita's intro was actually kind of it was kind of quick. It wasn't a typical character intro like one we're going to get a little later on with Mad-Eye Moody, and we'll talk about that major intro when we get there. But Rita's, it sort of just slipped by. There wasn't too much of an introduction. We just heard that Rita Skeeter had written the article, and that was it. But of course, we learned more about her later on. Yeah,
and J.K. Rowling has a tendency to do that sometimes. I think
we talked about that recently, actually.
Yeah, she did it with Cho Chang. She did it with Cedric Diggory, both during Quidditch, and it was kind of just in passing. So she has this way of introing characters that come into play later on in the series. Now, Arthur Weasley has this little bit of an argument with Molly, and he decides that it's important to put his job above his family, and he spends a lot of time at the Ministry over the course of the week that takes place in the chapter. Now, my question was, is he really that valuable to the Ministry, or do you think he just feels bad about the statement that he made that Rita used in the paper? Because, he's not that high-ranking of an official. He may be within his department, but as far as the hierarchy of the Ministry is concerned, he's not that high up there. So I just wonder if he's doing it more to kind of atone for what he said.
Well, I wonder at what point he doesn't put his job over his family. Like, where's the threshold? Because, you should see your kids off to school. Though, granted, I do agree with you. The second part of your question, I think he just felt bad about his statement more than anything. And he explained that in this chapter. He said, I feel so bad. It was all my fault. This wouldn't have happened.
Now, during this conversation, they all eventually head off. And Harry reveals to Ron and Hermione that he kept his scar hurting from both of them and he had written to Sirius. Now, I can't remember, but is this the first time he's really kept something big from them and he's chosen to go to Sirius instead? You know, he has sort of that godfather figure now, kind of like a parent. Does he feel more comfortable going to Sirius? Or he just thinks maybe Sirius will understand and not overreact?
Well, I do think it is the first time, Micah. I think you're right about that. And I think also, like, judging based on previous events, like the way we've seen both Ron and Hermione react. I mean, you know, Ron is just typical, you know, flabbergasted and doesn't really offer much input. And Hermione just, you know, flips. So it's sort of probably a combination of him wanting to retain some amount of normalcy with his friends, while at the same time taking advantage of this new father figure he has.
Eric is joining us now. Eric, where were you?
I know this isn't your political podcast, Andrew, but I feel like I need to take this opportunity to lobby for better infrastructure in Chicago. Maybe it's just me, but I feel like highways, by definition, are supposed to be able to handle sort of high volumes of traffic. So when it's not even rush hour and cars are bumper to bumper, you know, it's kind of an issue.
Well, I'm sorry you got stuck in a traffic jam, but we had to start without you. We just had to record.
I understand.
So during this time, we are introduced also to the Weasley's grandfather clock. As Arthur is spending a lot of time at the Ministry, Harry notices this grandfather clock on the wall, and I think it's the first time that it's described. I believe it was mentioned in Chamber of Secrets, but this is the first time we get a full analysis of it, and it kind of tells you what the clock does. It points to all the different members of the Weasley family and what they're doing, and I was wondering who would make something like this. You know, I don't know. It's Dumbledore, I think, talks about it later on in the series, how much he likes the clock in the Weasley's kitchen area. So, I don't know. Like, it seems like something cool and useful to have, you know, to know where everybody is and what they're doing.
I don't know. It seems sort of Big Brother-ish to me. It kind of freaks me out.
Yeah, I used to think it was cool, but now I just think it's creepy.
Like, if you had a...
Well, it's limited in description.
Yeah.
So, like, do you think you could, like, purchase a clock? Like, for instance, if Laura went into the clock shop, I'm sure it's just, like, some independent clockmaker, and she was like, can you make me a Johnny Depp clock? I need to know exactly where he is at all times. Yeah. Do you think they'd be able to do that?
I hope so.
They might be.
I could use that for other people.
Oh,
now, is this
like
clock
who?
in the movie?
Yeah, it's in Chamber.
It was in Chamber of Secrets.
Yeah, you see their heads, and their heads sort of react to the hands on the clock moving around. They're sort of like looking up and stuff. It was clever. This is actually one of the things I think Microsoft attempted to make in real life. I remember there was a news article about this a really long time ago.
In addition to the invisibility cloak?
Right. I'm going to do a quick Google search just to check, but yeah. It was back in August 2007. There's an article on back in 2005 at an internal tech fest. And Microsoft, they tried to make one of these. So
that's a good memory,
it's cool.
Andrew.
It's one of the cooler items in the Harry Potter world, I think. Albeit creepy.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like Twitter status update for wizards.
Right.
Eric, you put the next point in here. One of the things that Arthur shares with the family is all the howler trouble that the Ministry is having. And you pointed out that howlers are one of those things they probably wish they hadn't invented, but not enough to do anything about it. Couldn't they stop them somehow? The reason we bring this up, though, is the Ministry is being bombarded with howlers after the Quidditch World Cup. And you also ask, how many wizards are requesting Ministry compensation for possessions that were lost?
But isn't that sort of like saying in the real in our world, in the Muggle world, you know, why don't politicians just figure out a way to stop political smear campaigns? Like, this is just one of those things you have to deal with in the world. There are these magical items called howlers, and the Ministry can't keep them out. I mean, maybe they were designed to get anywhere to serve this exact purpose, because you want to make sure this person is getting your message. And if the
so
Ministry
howlers
can block
as
them,
pioneers of free speech.
Right, yeah, it's free speech, and it's getting your message where it belongs.
Yeah.
I never thought of it like that.
So it's like a protest, sort of. You don't have to go out and protest. You just send howlers.
The compensation for possessions thing is interesting, though. I wonder what would have happened here if everybody affected by Katrina went to our president and asked to be compensated for their lost possessions.
Weren't they?
They get some money.
Yeah, but they were nowhere near compensated.
Percy is going on about this and how people are trying to defraud the Ministry into replacing their items supposedly lost at the Quidditch World Cup fiasco. And that's what this whole chapter is about, is this whole fiasco and how the Ministry deals with it. But I thought it was interesting, and obviously it's slightly humorous, but Percy is ranting here about people who are submitting false reports.
Yeah, especially Mundungus Fletcher, which you pointed out.
The 12-bedroom tent with ensuite jacuzzi. But Percy knows for a fact that he was sleeping under a cloak propped on sticks. This is J.K. Rowling when I mean, it's just so enjoyable reading this.
And that happens all the time in the real world, too, I'm sure. People try to get more than they actually lost. Yeah, exactly.
And what happens during this conversation that they're having at dinner is we get our first look at Percy starting to side with the Ministry over his family, and he says, well, Father feels he's got to make up for his mistake at the match, doesn't he? If truth be told, he was a tad unwise to make a public statement without clearing it with his head of department first. And Mrs. Weasley, yells at him for making that statement. Don't talk about your father that way. But we see the development already of Percy. And
this has sort of been building up too, hasn't it? I mean, we've seen Percy speak so highly of the Ministry, and so he really stands for it. And then now that he sees, his family being mad that the Ministry is causing, essentially the Ministry causing his family to lose their dad for the day, it's frustrating that they feel frustrated at the Ministry.
Right.
So there's my convoluted sentence. But my point is he's trying to defend the Ministry because he loves them so much. He's been saying it this whole book so far.
Yeah. And this is all happening at dinner before Arthur arrives. And I thought it was ironic that Molly says that Arthur hadn't spent this much time at the Ministry since the days of you-know-who. And my comment was, well, guess what, Molly?
He's back.
Yeah.
He's back.
Exactly. Well, I mean, it's a little bit ironic, I thought, that she would say that. But when Arthur does finally arrive home, we learn that Rita Skeeter has found out about Bertha Jorkins, that she has gone missing. And I don't know how some big piece of information like that gets leaked. But I guess it's just one of those examples of the press getting hold of information that they shouldn't have. And Arthur also mentions Winky during the conversation, and this sets off a huge argument. And you see the beginnings of S.P.E.W in some of the statements that Hermione makes, because she stands up a lot for Winky throughout the course of the conversation. Did you guys notice that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really, and this is one of the first times we see Hermione being a true leader. I mean, there's other examples in the other books, but this is really one of her most ambitious projects yet, or at least it will be later in this book.
Yeah, and then just going back to Percy for a second, though, I mean, it's interesting that he'll defend the Ministry, even though the minister, Barty Crouch Sr. can't even remember his name. It just goes to show you how dense of a character he is.
And how much he loves the Ministry. He's just delusional about it.
Someone had sent in an interesting question, though, about this, though. Do you think Barty Crouch Sr. couldn't remember Percy's name because he was already under the Imperius Curse?
Oh, yeah, maybe that was a little hint.
Possible.
So after all this arguments take place, they go upstairs to pack for school, and Ron finds that he has some secondhand clothing from, the Salvation Army of Wizards, and that he's going to have to be wearing formal attire at some point this year. And, you really see how bothered by all this Ron is, because Harry, of course, has these brand new, better looking, formal clothes to take to school, and it's a money issue. And don't you think Mrs. Weasley could be a little bit more? You know what I'm saying? She knows that by doing these types of things, or buying something along those lines, that it sets Ron up for being
bullying.
Made fun of.
Yeah. Yeah, but this is the family. I mean, the family just can't afford it. If she listened to you and decided to buy him new robes, then the family couldn't eat for a week.
Plus,
why couldn't she fix
what?
Well, I was going to go to the tweet that somebody sent in. T. Starkey wrote, "Why can't Mrs. Weasley just fix Ron's ugly dress robes? She's like the queen of all things domestic. I'm sure she can make the needle and thread sew themselves."
Well, because then Draco couldn't make fun of Ron later on in the book. Everything happens for a reason.
Queen of all things domestic. I'm gonna use that in something. It's a very, very nice way of saying that she's a stay-at-home mom.
And Harry mentions here he wishes he could give the Weasleys half his fortune, but they just wouldn't accept it. I mean, maybe, just give Ron some money under the table and buy some stuff on his own at Diagon Alley.
Worked for the Weasley twins.
Yeah.
Plus, Ron is Harry Potter's friend. What has he possibly got to be sad about? He's friends with Harry Potter.
Yeah. And the other thing that we could bring up was Low Giants 55 wrote in and asked, how can the Weasleys get gold out of Harry's vault? It's always bothered me.
It's like any other bank account. You can put another account holder on there who can access the money.
Yeah, I guess that's probably what Harry did.
Yeah.
All right, and that wraps up Chapter 10. Andrew?
Okay, now it's time for Chapter 11, Aboard the Hogwarts Express. This is always one of the chapters I look forward to the most because, heading back to school for another year, at least in the first 6 books. So, Harry, for the first time, sees what it's like to communicate with someone via fireplace. This was right at the beginning. They're talking to Amos Diggory, and we see here that Mrs. Weasley is even able to feed Amos a piece of toast through the fire. And I had forgotten this happened because, in the movie, you just see Harry talking to Sirius through the fireplace. So I just thought, imagine all the possibilities you can do. You can transfer items through a fireplace.
Diseases.
Without Floo powder. And Eric suggested you could even do something else very inappropriate that I won't mention on the show. But I think you're right.
Through a fireplace.
Yeah, there's all these things you can do through the fireplace, including feeding people.
Man, that just eliminates the problem of the long-distance relationship.
Yeah, but
it's also, Laura, it's also pretty hot, wouldn't you say?
Eric.
Hey, Laura, I'll meet you at our respective fireplaces tonight.
you don't want the Ministry watching, though, because don't they monitor the network?
Oh, right. Darn it.
Oh, don't tell me you don't want somebody watching. Come on. Adds to the fun, Micah.
So, I just thought that was kind of funny that you could feed toast and probably so much more through the fireplace.
Sorry.
So, but I wonder, why couldn't humans just transfer their bodies through it? Is it just because somehow the face makes that open connection? And then
in the movie, I mean, you can transfer bodies through. That's how the Floo network works. But
is this the Floo? Are they talking through the Floo network?
In one of the movies, doesn't somebody use Floo powder just like normal Floo powder, but only put their head in? Or actually, that's even in the books. I think Order of the Phoenix, maybe. Where it works the same way as the Floo network, but instead of putting your whole body through, you just put your head through. I feel like that's Order of the Phoenix, the book, somewhere, where they just do that. So, as a result,
Harry does that in
both
Umbridge's office when he's going to try and find Sirius, and he runs into Creature.
So that's how it works.
Yeah, I mean, that's just one example. He does it in this book too, when he talks to Sirius.
Well, Sirius talks to him. He doesn't Does he go through the fireplace to talk
I see
to
what you're saying.
Yeah, seriously. But that's what I'm saying. So, this is just a thing where Amos Diggory, before he leaves, Molly gives him a piece of toast. And he says, thanks. And, he's obviously chewing it. So, it's just like the regular Floo network, only you're not actually leaving, you're still kneeling at home. It's just your head is transferring through the fire. It's magic.
Yeah, okay. I just looked it up quick. And according to the Harry Potter lexicon, and they got this information from Goblet of Fire, you can use the Floo network just to speak with another Floo connection rather than traveling there. So yes, this is on the Floo network. Very good. All right, so that answers my question. You can transfer your body. So the gang heads to King's Cross, and Bill drops a few hints about the Triwizard Tournament, but still doesn't reveal exactly what's going on. And this time it's really bugging. I think it was Ron who said, What? Tell us already. And while on the Hogwarts Express, Harry, while overhearing a conversation that Draco's having, learns about Durmstrang for the first time. And of course, we'll be learning much more about them throughout this book, thanks to the Triwizard Tournament. As the trio continue talking about Durmstrang on their own, Hermione reveals that Hogwarts cannot be seen by outsiders. It just looks like an old ruin with a sign that says, "Danger, do not enter, unsafe." I'm wondering, what if someone does try to get in? What happens? Does it push you away?
Yeah, I wonder what kind of ruin it is. Like, is it a ruin that is exactly shaped, same walls and everything as
exactly.
Hogwarts? Because that's a pretty impressive ruin,
Right.
Or if it's just the sign, like, then again, if there is such a thing as being unplottable, it's very possible that, you walk up to the cliff and you're actually nowhere near Hogwarts, so.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of what I'm thinking. Hogwarts is unplottable, like Hermione says. So I wonder if you see the old ruin, and if you approach it, maybe you can walk into it, but it's not Hogwarts. It's just the old ruin.
I don't know.
We don't know for sure.
Yeah.
What was the one with the appointment? That was the Quidditch World Cup?
That was specifically the Quidditch World Cup. So Hermione, having read Hogwarts: A History, did not make that same connection about Hogwarts, but she said maybe it's like the Quidditch World Cup, where you do remember that you've forgotten something important.
Yeah, that could be. I'm sure Dumbledore has the right protections in place. I mean, that's for sure. So, moving along, where was I? Draco comes in and asks Harry and Ron if they'll compete. But they don't know what he's talking about. This was the same thing Bill was hinting at. So Draco makes fun of Arthur and Percy's inability to get secret big information, because Draco just assumed that Arthur and Percy didn't even know, when in fact, pretty much the entire Weasley family knew about it, except for the trio. All the Hogwarts students didn't know about it in the Weasley family, of course. So this makes Ron push Draco out, and Eric, do you want to just go ahead and take this point?
Yeah, when they walk on Draco earlier on the train, he's talking about his dad knowing Karkaroff, and he's bragging about, the event. And then when he comes in and taunts Harry and Ron and Hermione about it, he talks about his father, knowing about it weeks and weeks and months ago. He says particularly that Cornelius Fudge himself told Lucius Malfoy about the Triwizard Tournament. Obviously, he doesn't mention what it is to them, but he says that Fudge himself told Lucius. So this is, I felt like this was setting Lucius Malfoy up, because, we find out about Durmstrang in this chapter, and Durmstrang is this school where they practice dark arts, and then the headmaster at this dark arts heavy school is good friends with Lucius Malfoy. And it's just setting up. Obviously, we know that Karkaroff was formerly a Death Eater, has the dark mark, and so Lucius and Karkaroff are probably, BFFs.
And we have a tweet here related to this topic. B Daily 2 writes, "Doesn't it seem like a little foreshadowing to Voldy's return when Malfoy talks so openly about wanting to practice dark arts on the train?"
I don't know if it's foreshadowing, though. Because now they don't even know that Voldemort is back. Even Lucius doesn't know that. He was just as shocked to see the dark mark at the Quidditch World Cup as anybody else. We learn that later on. All the Death Eaters were scared because none of them had conjured it up. So I don't think it was necessarily foreshadowing, because even then, Draco has no idea that Voldemort is back.
Yeah, it's more like setup and payoff. You know, in year 4, Malfoy's on the train complaining about how he can't do more dark arts, and then in movie 6, Malfoy is inducted as a Death Eater into Voldemort's, inner circle, and he's thinking the exact opposite. It's ironic.
He's ready to wet his pants
while he's on the train.
Yeah,
so
he's so scared.
I mean, it could just be the journey. It's a long journey, on the train.
To wrap up this chapter, right before they arrive at a rainy Hogwarts, Eric, in all his inappropriateness, put down this quote.
Well,
Ron's bad mood continued for the rest of the train journey. He didn't even speak much while they were changing into their robes. Isn't this because he can see Hermione's under things? Writes Eric. Oh, Eric. You wished you were Ron.
She says they change into their robes, whatever. It was funny.
And Chapter 12, Eric, it's all you. You made it just in time.
Chapter 12, the Triwizard Tournament. Alright, so the trio encounter their worst trip to Hogwarts. It's rainy. Rainy, rainy, rainy. Ron says the lake might overflow. But, regardless, first-year students are still crossing the lake to get to the school. Harry remarks about this. He asks Hagrid about it. Hagrid's like, oh, it's gonna be a big one. All that stuff. So, isn't this a safety hazard? I'm telling you, I mean, these first years, and you see them later, they show up in the Great Hall, and, Dennis Creevy, is under Hagrid's coat. He fell in the lake. Couldn't they have, surely there's room, or there could be room in the carriages, that take the rest of the students up. I feel like the storm is a little dangerous. Do they not care about?
But it's a rite of passage.
Exactly, it's a tradition. They wouldn't want to go through their years at Hogwarts knowing that their first year they didn't do what everyone else did, take the boats up. It's very beautiful and kind of eerie, sort of like we saw in the first movie.
Well, right, but my point
that makes it all the more special.
Depends on the storm, I would argue.
Special.
I mean, if it's cloudy, and what about on a foggy, first day at Hogwarts? Foggy September 1st.
Oh, that would be nice too.
Maybe I don't know the climate. Maybe it's never foggy on September 1st.
Oh, they should have had umbrellas or something. That's what it comes down to.
It just seemed pretty dangerous, so that's all I had to say about that. They end up...
Well, I'm glad no one died.
Actually, I was going to send you a song to play anyway, just in case, in the rare event that there was a first year who was unaccounted for. And
speaking of songs, on episode 208, we played a song because you thought Muggles died, but we got a lot of emails from people saying Muggles actually didn't die. You dropped the ball there, buddy.
I just like music. If anybody has a problem with that, they can send an email to eric@staff.mugglenet.com or...
Yeah, but a lot of people, got emotional, myself included, thinking that innocent Muggles had died during the...
Actually, if you go back and if you listen to the episode, and this is not me weaseling out of it, if you go back to the episode, it was actually more of a tribute song to all Muggles who had been tortured and killed by Death Eaters, by Voldemort's followers.
Like ever?
Yeah, like ever. And I'm pretty sure that the wordage that is in the, because I was very aware of that, and I want to say that the wordage that is in the show should support that. So, but I mean, as we were going over in that chapter by chapter, it was pretty horrific what had been done to that Muggle family. So I feel like it still warranted a Ballroom Blitz song by Sweep. Anyway.
Well, nice try.
Yeah, thanks.
But, before we continue, Laura has to leave now. Laura, we'll try to plan better in the future so we can have you on for an entire episode.
Yeah, let's try not to make this into a pattern.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Laura. Good luck on your school stuff.
Thank you. See you guys later.
All right, bye.
Bye.
So they traipse through the rain. They get up into the Great Hall, dodging water balloons by Peeves. And they're in the Great Hall, and... they're at the feast, and Nearly Headless Nick is sitting among the Gryffindors. And he is described as being dressed tonight in his usual doublet, but with a particularly large ruff, which served the dual purpose of looking extra festive and ensure that his head did not wobble too much on his partially severed neck. So, JKR is saying he was dressed usually except for this particularly large ruff. Can ghosts change clothes?
Well, this seems to prove it, doesn't it?
It would seem like she's saying that he's changed his clothes, that he's wearing his usual except for this large, rough.
So even the clothes are ghostly, you're saying?
Well, I'm saying he's got like a ghostly wardrobe somewhere, like maybe ghostly designer clothing stores, sell to...
Well, didn't he wear something different on his death day party, too?
That's a good question, but it was a while ago. I don't remember. I mean, the Headless Hunt...
I mean, I guess that is a little factoid, that
it's kind of a factoid that... I thought it was interesting because I didn't really remember that being in the books, being mentioned. But yeah, probably during the Death Day party, because you want to assume that the members of the Headless Hunt don't always wear their horses. Okay, so next point is it's actually a really sentimental story that I wanted to share because a lot of people don't know this actual fact of the books. There's a quote from Nearly Headless Nick again. He says, "I do hope this year's batch of Gryffindors are up to scratch." And he is applauding as MacDonald Natalie joined the Gryffindor table. And in real life, I want to share this article in the show notes, but in real life, the student, Natalie MacDonald, was actually a 9-year-old Harry Potter fan, who passed away of leukemia. And her mother had written to J.K. Rowling, just about Natalie, about how big of a Harry Potter fan she was. And J.K. Rowling got the letter, but wasn't able to respond to it, before Natalie had passed away. And the result was, I think it was like the day after she passed away, that J.K. Rowling had really, really, tried to get it a response to her letter in time, but didn't. And the Natalie's mother and J.K. Rowling continued a friendship, which lasted, years after. And actually, it's just a wonderful article. I can't do it justice here. It was written in Maclean's, which I believe is a magazine in Canada. But anyway, Accio Quote, which is a wonderful archive of J.K. Rowling interviews and newspaper articles and all that, is I included a link in the show notes, and I think...
so in honor of Natalie,
basically,
Joe decided to include her as a Hogwarts student.
As a Gryffindor. Which is
really cool.
For being, for bravery, because she braved the illness.
Yeah, that's great.
So,
and heartbreaking that Natalie couldn't finish reading the entire series.
Yeah. I'd actually heard that J.K. Rowling was looking to send her a copy of Goblet of Fire so that she could read what happened before anybody else.
According to this article, she actually in her response letter, which arrived the day after Natalie passed away, was the secrets of what would happen in book 4.
Oh wow, well, that's very nice of her.
So yeah, it was quite special. And then Natalie's mom kept that letter and kept it out of the press until far after the story had been written. So,
okay.
So yeah, basically cool. This student who is, it's a flyaway line, Nearly Headless Nick says, "I hope these Gryffindors this year are up to scratch." But, actually that Natalie MacDonald was a real life person. And according to this article again, is the only, real life person that is, named in the books as being a fictional one. So that's J.K. Rowling's tribute to a fan. It's a really nice gesture. And because Joe's going to be on Oprah tomorrow, I feel like it's important to reflect on Joe's good deeds. So, at any rate, I mentioned they dodged water balloons coming in that Peeves was throwing, and we didn't really know what was up with him. He was just being, adding insult to injury, I guess, with the wetness. Ron was really upset. Nearly Headless Nick reveals that Peeves had wanted to attend the feast in the Great Hall, but by way of a vote from the Ghosts Council, he was vetoed. Now, I don't know. This struck me as interesting because I'm wondering what this Ghosts Council was. Nearly Headless Nick says that the Fat Friar was all for letting Peeves into the Great Hall during the feast, but the Bloody Baron put his foot down. He put his bloody stump down. So I guess Dumbledore just lets the ghosts decide, ghost matters on their own. This is the first mention of this Ghost Council that was really interesting to me. What do you guys think?
Well, I think they sort of live in their own world in Hogwarts, and Dumbledore can trust them. They're obviously mature adults. So, I think, I like this idea of the group of ghosts that gets together and sort of the council, that make decisions based on a vote. I think that's a clever idea for them to manage their, ghostly issues.
Yeah. I just think of it like a ghost game show with like the Grey Lady and the Bloody Baron on like a dating show because of their history together. But maybe that's just me.
The Newlywed Game.
Contestant number 3, would you kill my sister to get at my heart? No, what happened? I'm sorry. Let's detracting. Back to the chapter.
Next item.
There's this funny exchange. Okay, because Nick is talking about something else. Oh, yeah, Peeves so as a result of being denied, Peeves goes and terrorizes the House-Elves in the kitchen, and Hermione just like drops her plate, or drops her pumpkin juice, actually, and stains the white tablecloth orange. And she says, there are House-Elves here at Hogwarts? And Nick is like, over 100. And she's like, wait, I've never seen one. And he says, that's the mark of a good House-Elf, isn't it? That you don't know it's there? And Hermione stared at him.
This is where I think Hermione starts to push it, because at least they're in a good environment that isn't like, say, the Malfoys. You know, Dumbledore isn't treating the House-Elves poorly.
Yeah.
They're in a nice work environment, I'm sure. At least nice by House-Elf standards.
Well, Hermione doesn't think it's a nice environment because she asked Nick, do they get sick leaves and pensions? And
no, but that's what. But I'm saying Hermione should at least be happy that it's a good environment, that it's Hogwarts.
Well, yeah, right. But according to, I feel like Hermione thinks that it's, you know, she says slave labor. She protests. She doesn't need any more food that night, despite Ron like wafting smells of spotted dick at her. But regardless, that's what it is. It's in the book. Don't think I'm being incorrect.
No, I know. I'm not denying what you're saying. I just disagree with.
Well, she thinks that because they don't get sick leaves and pensions, that it's still slave labor, even though.
And that's a complete Muggle thing to say, by the way, too. Sick leaves and pensions. I mean, do they even exist in the wizarding world?
Sick leave?
Sick leave, maybe. Pensions? I don't know. Like, does Arthur have a pension from working at the Ministry?
Why wouldn't he?
I don't know, but. Anyway, go ahead.
Nick chortled so much that his ruff slipped off his head and fell off. So he put on this extra ruff that's not normally part of his ghostly costume, and his head fell off anyway. But he says, yeah, they don't want sick leaves and pensions, but his words are lost on Hermione, who puts down her plate. So, yeah, I agree with you, Andrew. I mean, it's a positive environment, and as we meet them later in the book, they're really happy to be at the kitchens. Like, only Dobby, in fact, they think Dobby is really weird for going about his business like he is. So anyway, so they finish their feast, and actually Dumbledore has some announcements, and the sky lights up, there's lightning, and they meet, or are introduced to who they think is Mad-Eye Moody. And this is an interesting descriptor here. I'm going to quote this from the book. The lightning had thrown the man's face into sharp relief, and it was a face unlike any Harry had ever seen. It looked as though it had been carved out of weathered wood by somebody who had only the vaguest idea of what human faces are supposed to look like, and was none too skilled with a chisel. Every inch of skin seemed to be scarred, the mouth looked like a diagonal gash, and a large chunk of the nose was missing, but it was the man's eyes that made him frightening. And my question to you guys is, where can you get writers like JKR? Because this to me just signified how darn awesome she is.
Well, what really stood out to me about this introduction is that it's a solid 6 paragraphs, and these are big paragraphs. I cannot remember, and there may be other times, but this is a big intro for one specific character. And that just really surprised me because, you know, it's 6 paragraphs of you not knowing who this is. Until Dumbledore says, "May I introduce to you our new Defense Against the Dark Arts professor." I just thought that was interesting. I don't think there's really anything to it, but 6 paragraphs. Whoa!
It's kind of ironic, too, because this is it's not, there wouldn't be 6 paragraphs of description if Barty Crouch Jr. didn't pull a good Moody. You know what I'm saying? So this is the character that might have the longest introduction in most descriptions, but he's not who we think he is. So a lot of it is actually just false because it's not Mad-Eye Moody at all. You know what I'm saying?
No, that's a good point.
So maybe she put extra effort into it, even though, it's not him. So that's very, very interesting. He's definitely an important, character But this intro, was absolutely very, very descriptive. So,
huge.
Yeah, 6 paragraphs. So Dumbledore announces the Triwizard Tournament. Finally, they know what was going on. He says traditionally it's between the 3 largest wizard schools in Europe, which is Beauxbatons, Durmstrang, and Hogwarts. But he calls them the largest wizard schools in Europe, but he doesn't say they're the only wizard schools in Europe. So I feel like there are definitely more. I'm sure J.K. Rowling's touched on that, so I won't go further. But
well, and what's mentioned maybe in this chapter is that there are these are the 3 largest schools in Europe, I think it said. So maybe there are smaller wizarding schools, which I would be very interested in seeing.
Like an Italian wizard school?
Yeah, because there's got to be a lot of different dynamics in the smaller wizard schools. I mean, how many houses do they have? Do they have houses? How does it work?
Yeah.
Be interesting to see.
And plus, Beauxbatons and Durmstrang are really, they seem to be, extreme exaggerations. Like, one has a pirate ship that carries its students everywhere, and they wear fur capes. It's just very, and is it Germany? It's not Germany. It's like Bulgaria, isn't it? So, because Victor Krum goes there.
Well, yeah, Krum plays for the Bulgarian Quidditch team, so, it's not a definite that that's where Durmstrang is, but it's in the general vicinity. I think that's probably a safe bet.
So, at any rate, I did want to mention this Triwizard Tournament because I thought it was a clever way for J.K. Rowling in terms of the books to kind of not have the same recurring theme, not get bored with things, because all of the last book, all of Prisoner of Azkaban, we were worried about Sirius Black, and the Hogwarts had all this security, the Dementors. It was a morbid type of state to have school in. But this year, in order to sort of make people forget, I feel like the Ministry and, Dumbledore both probably agreed to try and revive this old, contest, this old sports, event. And I feel like it was, largely in a part to, have people forget about the terror of last year. And everybody's excited about sports. I know I am. So I thought it was a great sort of way to detract. There's still security, but it's kind of exciting. You know what I'm saying? So it's not.
It's interesting, even now, how Dumbledore is laying the groundwork for unity, and I think that's a lot of what this book is about, is building those relationships that come into play later on in the series, whether it's Fleur and her obvious relationship with Bill and how that all plays out, or Hermione and Krum. And I was surprised that we didn't really see any more of those 2 schools in the final battle. But that's Dumbledore's hope, I think. By hosting this tournament, even though, like you said, there's that ministry element of it. Dumbledore knows the value of having
unity.
All of these people together. Yeah, exactly.
Well, it begs the question, though. He wants unity, which is good, but what role do they have in the final book? Fleur is relevant as a character because she marries Bill and bothers the heck out of them in, the beginning of movie 7, and eventually provides shelter for Harry when he's on the run. But, Fleur is important because she marries into the Weasleys, and Krum isn't necessarily important. I feel like Madame Maxime is probably the second most important character of all of either Beauxbatons and Durmstrang, and that's because she journeys with Hagrid to go get the giants. So, in the end, Beauxbaton, and maybe I'm completely wrong here, but Beauxbaton and Durmstrang don't really have that large a role that we see. I'm sure they do in the war against Voldemort. And it's kind of one of those things where I want to say the story is set in England, so of course we hear about England. We can assume that if Voldemort took over, England and killed Harry Potter, that America and South America and Africa would all have fallen as well. But I think as far as Harry's story is concerned, Durmstrang and Beauxbatons don't really, as far as I can see, play a larger role in the later books.
Yeah, the only thing that I can remember is Krum and him telling Harry that that symbol that Xenophilius Lovegood was wearing was the mark of Grindelwald.
Oh, because Grindelwald went to
Durmstrang. So but even that, I mean, obviously it's a big plot point, but again, there's no fighting. Like, you would expect to have, with all the characters that were in the final battle, have figured Crumb would be somewhere in there.
I mean, they got a pirate ship. Come on, and he's a Quidditch captain. I mean, really, there's this action.
Yar, we be fighting Voldemort. Yar.
Are you alright?
Yeah. Sacrifices I make for the show.
Get some water.
Air. You're
No, my
sacrificing
voice.
You're
air
sacrificing
I
air.
just scratch my voice to turn it into a pirate.
Put up air. It's not air, it's R. Anyway.
So, Eric, what else happens in this chapter?
All right. So, Dumbledore, anyway, he announces the Triwizard Tournament. He talks about the age restriction. He says that he's going to be personally overseeing the security for the age restriction. This really upsets Fred and George. But anyway, I think this is one of those things where it sets it up so that, to make the readers kind of confused. But it was really easy. And, it turns out, it seems like it was really easy just for Mad-Eye Moody to put Harry's name in the goblet, because that's who it was. I mean, it was Barty Crouch Jr. disguised as Moody, simply walked through the age restriction because he was old enough, and was able to put Harry's name in. And the goblet didn't have such an age restriction, so it obviously it chose Harry because he's the chosen one. But it was easy, wasn't it? I mean,
I think you were thinking too much into this. I mean, Dumbledore just meant what was meant by it was Dumbledore was going to set up the age line, and no one else was. And yeah, apparently he thought that age line was secure enough, but apparently not.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be secure enough so that Fred and George couldn't hoodwink it. But not for somebody like Mad-Eye Moody. I mean, he's an Auror, and Barty Crouch Jr. is a very experienced person in dark arts. So I think he would be able to figure out how to do that. Between, his knowledge and adapting Moody's qualities, he would certainly be able to do something like that. I agree. It's kind of one of those things when you hear it in the movie, Moody says when they're all in that trophy room, only somebody who could have, conjured an extremely powerful Confundus charm could have done something like this. So, you feel like it's a little bit of a cheap escape that they went that route, but
I don't
know.
Yeah, in the movie it's played out more than it is in the book. The book is just to keep people like Fred and George out, but in the movie it's meant to draw even more suspense to Harry being chosen.
Yeah,
as if there wasn't enough suspense with Michael Gambon throwing Harry around the room, but. Anyway, we're going to talk about that eventually on the show. Again. So, anyway, I wanted to mention, you talked about Barty Crouch Jr. Now, I feel like he was just a punk kid when he was with the Death Eaters, but, now, Dumbledore, it also goes to say, Dumbledore trusts his teachers to not, put Harry's name in or put, endanger a student. And when Moody first enters the Great Hall, he sits down. Dumbledore motions for him to sit down at Dumbledore's right hand. Like, it's the seat to his right. That was mentioned in that. I thought that's important. So, he really does trust Moody. They're old friends, and he trusts his teachers too. So, final thought. They all go up to bed, and Harry, unlike before where he's had dreams, of things that become relevant. This time he's actually just awake, and as he's going to bed, he's thinking fondly of hoodwinking the age line and winning the Triwizard Tournament. J.K. Rowling writes that he sees Cho's face in the crowd when he has done this, and is particularly glad that Ron cannot see, Ron, who's next to him in the other bed, cannot see what he is seeing as he drifts off to sleep.
So, young love, nothing like it.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to bring up, did we discuss at all how, Moody was attacked? Was that brought up at all in these chapters? I thought it was.
It was. It was, but it's, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was weird that somebody as powerful as him would set up a trap like trash cans. I mean, that's a little novice.
Well, it wasn't him who set up trash, right? Or, oh yeah,
No, that was his trap to let him know if somebody was approaching his property. And obviously he was scouted by Barty Crouch Jr. and Peter Pettigrew, so they knew what to do. But it was just, I mean, really, that's your defense? Trash cans? I mean,
well, Pettigrew is completely absent from, or not this book, but you know, I wonder if the trash cans is what the Ministry found when they got there. You know, I mean, there could have been more permanent curses or something, but then again, I mean, maybe the real Moody was really buying into the idea that he might actually be more paranoid than he should be, or, you know, we don't know the mental state of Mad-Eye Moody at this point, so I wonder if he wasn't, in fact, just actually pretty crazy, and it turns out for a good reason.
Or is it just that the trap is so stupid it just might work? You know,
I think that's it.
Who would ever suspect trash can? You know, I don't know. I just thought I'd bring it up.
Well, that wraps up chapter by chapter this week. We're done another 3 chapters, boys. Good work. Yes. Now let's move on to Muggle Mail. First email comes from Rebecca Jackson, 15 of Vancouver. She writes, "Hey MuggleCasters, just wanted to give my thoughts on how Fred and George predicted the Quidditch World Cup. Is it possible they just predicted off of what they already knew about the two teams? Harry, after seeing the match, remarks on how the Irish Chasers were too good and that Bulgaria was never going to catch up, so Crumb ended it on his terms. Maybe Fred and George already knew of the Irish Chasers' skill and Crumb's nature as they were big Quidditch fans. Just my thoughts. Keep on being awesome. Love, Rebecca." And we got a lot of emails similar to this one in response to our chapter-by-chapter discussion for episode 208. Mike and Eric, a lot of people think that they made a educated guess. So
yeah, I think that's probably
best
a good answer. Yeah, I think that they're right. They're pretty knowledgeable about Quidditch. So, seems like a good evaluation.
Micah, how about you take that second email?
Sure. The next email comes from Tanya.
Yes, you're right.
33.
All right, next email.
Ding, okay.
Indiana. From Tanya, 33 of Paoli, Indiana. And she says, in episode 208, Wannabe Wizards, you guys were wondering about the Voldemort voiceover in the TV spot where he mentions the Harry's heart. I believe this is the scene where Ron destroys the locket Horcrux. The quote is, "I have seen your heart, and it is mine." This is taken directly from the book and is directed at Ron, page 375 in the U.S. hardcover. I think they simply took it out of context for use in the TV spot. Thought you guys may find this helpful. The show is fantastic. Keep up the good work, Tanya. And she's definitely right. We talked about this. If people haven't listened to on episode 209, the live trailer analysis, we mentioned it towards the end of the episode because it's in that trailer as well.
And we have gotten a lot of emails about this as well. Yeah. So wanted to bring it up again.
Yep. So I'll take the next one.
Eric,
yep.
The final email.
Final email from Katrina from Minneapolis. Subject is Mrs. Weasley's marriage. She says, "Hello, everybody. I'm listening to episode 208 right now, and you guys are talking about the Weasley's marriage and whether it is a healthy one. Did we talk about that? I think it is a very healthy marriage, and that they very much love each other. Molly is simply a mother hen. Let me tell you, as a mom of 3 kids under 4, they drive you nutters. When they first met, Molly was a lot like Ginny. Exciting. I bet when they first met, Molly was a lot like Ginny. Exciting, energetic, brave, and those traits still show through, but now she has such a huge responsibility of a family, you have to keep a tight leash. I mean, come on. If you had Fred and George as children, would you give them an inch? No way. You would discipline them like crazy and just hope they turn out all right without killing one of their siblings on accident. That's a good point. It reminds me of the time that one of them tried to force Ron into an unforgivable vow. Anyway. That was me, not reading them. Mr. Weasley hiding things from his wife isn't sneaky or malicious. It is simply keeping things from her that would rile her up. She has a temper, and probably Molly knows all about the things he does because she's a sharp cookie. He is probably leaving spark plugs all over the house. He has got such a scatterbrain. Super laid-back, unorganized men like Arthur usually marry strong-willed women. That is what my marriage is. Molly's job is to keep her family healthy and safe, and though her family has pushed her sanity to its limits, needing the clock that says where everyone is, for instance, she is still warm, loving, and down-to-earth, just like any good mother. I think Arthur and Molly are a perfect match.
Well, it was nice to get a opinion from a mother on this topic.
Yeah.
And even though I still don't completely agree with her because she thinks it's a very healthy marriage. I mean, though granted, what do I know? I'm not married. I'm just bitter. So now moving on, as promised at the top of the show, we are going to play an old favorite segment. Favorites! And this episode, we're talking about new actors or actresses to see in part 1. Mike and Eric, while you guys are thinking about your favorite actor or actress, new favorite actor or actress in part 1, I'm going to read some of the listeners' thoughts on their favorites, and these were sent in to us via Twitter. Dr. Gracie writes, I'm really looking forward to seeing Rhys Ifans. He's a really wonderful actor and very underrated. Of course, he is going to play Xenophilius Lovegood.
I think it's Rhys. So you don't get emails.
Rhys Ifans, is that right?
Yeah, Rhys Ifans. I could be wrong, but...
Kate Siv writes, I can't wait to see Bill Nighy. He's amazing. Bill Nye. Or Bill Nighy. I think it's Bill Nye.
These Brits.
Isn't it Bill Nye? We've talked about this before. I think it's Bill Nye. I can't wait to see Bill Nye. He's amazing. Also, Rhys Ifans. Did I get it right that time?
Actually, you gotta put it into. I'm gonna put it into Microsoft Narrator and see.
Okay,
we'll blame Bill Gates. We'll send him all our hate mail.
Marie Aaron writes, I'm definitely most looking forward to Jamie Bauer Campbell. Of course, he's going to play Grindelwald, or young
Grindelwald. She had replied, Jamie Bauer.
Yeah. Heather RD writes, I'm most looking forward to seeing Bill Nye. I've been waiting for him to get cast in HP for years. Peculiar Ways writes, Domhnall Gleeson as Bill Weasley. I've never seen him act before. Just know that his dad is Brendan Gleeson, who of course plays Mad-Eye. Jasmine's Wings writes, Charlie, because they took him out of the previous ones. And finally, Spazzo writes, Yaxley in The Chase After Ron. So, Micah, who are you most looking forward to seeing?
That's, I think I would have to go with Bill Nye as Scrimgeour. I think, sort of that interesting dynamic that he has to play between the press and of course the trio. I'm interested. Of course, Eric has seen the movie, so he knows what that's like. No, I'm saying that how Bill has done in this role, and I'd be interested to hear. Like, do you think he fit the part well?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it was weird, kind of, because depending on how they're casting, it was just like he had been in all of the previous films. It's like he kind of had this friendly look about him that it's like you had grown up watching him on screen, but you hadn't. But yeah, he fits the part.
Yeah, so he would probably be my top choice, and then everybody seems to also want to see Rhys Ifans as Xenophilius Lovegood.
Okay, Eric, how about you?
Actually, my favorite person who's a new character in Deathly Hallows Part 1 is Andy Linden, who plays Mundungus Fletcher.
I was going to say, is that from seeing the movie, or would you have said that prior to?
Yeah, I would not have said that prior to seeing the movie. I'm sorry.
So he does a good job, is what you're saying.
Yeah, as Mundungus Fletcher. And the reason I bring it up and choose him is because reading about him billing the Ministry for his 12-bedroom tent with ensuite jacuzzi in this chapter that we just read for chapter by chapter, it seems like the kind of thing that this actor would very much do. He's just sleazy and unreliable in Deathly Hallows Part 1, the movie.
To break the all the answers that we're seeing here, I'm going to say my favorite, and this technically doesn't count, but my two favorites are Miranda Richardson and Imelda Staunton. And I say that because we haven't seen them in a while. Of course, Miranda Richardson, who plays Rita Skeeter, we haven't seen her since Goblet of Fire. And Imelda Staunton, who plays Umbridge, we haven't seen her since Order of the Phoenix, and I miss them.
Which one of them was it that said that they didn't think that they would be back?
Miranda Richardson.
Yeah.
She said that at the Goblet of Fire premiere. I was very upset at her. She was like, I'd rather give somebody else a chance to do it. But she's back.
I think she said she'd rather sell one of her kids, actually, than never show.
Well, that's how much she hated it. But it's going to be a small appearance. I think she's just going to be in a picture or something.
I think,
but
yeah.
She is there.
Hazel Douglas, who plays Bathilda Bagshot. No.
Oh, she's just the creepy. That's like Mrs. Fig, except Mrs. Fig is worse because Mrs. Fig wasn't supposed to be creepy, and she was really, really, really creepy.
To wrap up the show today, we have a chicken soup email. This comes from Haley, 14, of Fort Calhoun, Nebraska. She writes, Hi, MuggleCasters. I'm your biggest fan. No joke. I listen to your show 24/7. Literally. I have severe insomnia, and your show helps me to fall asleep at night. Because I spend so much time with my earbuds in, I get lots of annoyed looks from my parents and siblings. My brother will take one look at me and say, MuggleCast, and ignore me for the rest of the day. Not that is a bad thing sometimes. My mom has to tell me at least 3 times a day to take out your earbuds and listen to me. Well, one rainy afternoon, I turned on my computer to find a new episode waiting for me. After doing my ritual dance of joy, I popped my earbuds in to hear the wonderful sound of your voices once more. Okay, the thing with me is I cannot just sit and listen to music. I have to do something. So I set about cleaning our living room and ended up cleaning the entire house. My mom was shocked and pleased to find this and asked me what my motive was. MuggleCast, I replied. My family has a new respect for your show now. They get almost excited as me when there's a new episode. It's Haley cleaning the house time. She's quoting her mother there. So here's a thank you from my whole family for your great podcast, and we all will be angry beyond imagination if you stop podcasting. Well, for your mother's sake, I know she wants a clean house, so we will continue podcasting. You know, I don't listen to my own podcast while cleaning, but I do listen to other podcasts while cleaning. It's like doing the dishes and stuff. I mean, I'm not going around dusting, turning on a podcast. Long-term tasks that take a little bit of time. And like Haley, I too do a ritual dance of joy whenever a new episode is released of MuggleCast. So all
that is my
good.
favorite noodle soup.
Yeah, that was really nice. Thank you, Haley. So before we let everyone go, we want to remind you about our website, which is MuggleCast.com. There you'll find lots of information pertaining to this wonderful Harry Potter program that we produce every other week for your listening pleasure. You can find a link to our iTunes page where you can subscribe and review us. You can also follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, vote for us on Podcast Alley. We haven't plugged that in a while. And so much more.
We haven't been on there in a while.
You can even find our new P.O. Box address, which is Andrew Sims, MuggleCast, P.O. Box 3634, Fullerton, California, 92834-3634. That was a mouthful, so just visit MuggleCast.com. Click on Contact at the top, and you'll see the P.O. Box. And while you're there, you can also fill out a little feedback form to email us. If you have a question about what we talked about on the show today, or maybe you disagree with something we said, or maybe you want to yell at Eric more for playing a song on episode 208 for no good reason, you can use the feedback form for anything.
We're going to play a song in this episode. You can just edit it in later.
Nobody died.
Well, I feel like there was a first year who fell in the lake and wasn't accounted for, and nobody remembered him because he was unpopular.
I don't know.
Yes.
No, we'll need listener permission before we do that again. They were very upset, Eric.
I'm sorry.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. I'm Andrew Sims.
I'm Eric Skull.
And I'm Micah Tannenbaum.
We'll see you next time for episode 211. Bye-bye. Yar.
Bye.